by the Medo-Persians. We not only in secular history, we do have reference to it in secular history, but also in this book of Daniel itself in chapter 5. You remember when Belshazzar's writing on the wall, and Daniel's brought in, and he pronounces God's judgment that the kingdom is going to be overthrown. And that night, they were overthrown, and the city fell to the Persians under Cyrus the Persian. And so we also find later in Daniel's lifespan, it actually extended until the early years of the Persian Empire, and he actually served in the Medo-Persian administration for a time. We read at the end of chapter 6, "So this Daniel prospered in the reign of Darius and in the reign of Cyrus the Persian." And you may also remember that the historical setting of the book of Esther and the books of Ezra and Nehemiah is during that period of Persian domination that followed the Babylonian Empire. So there can be little doubt that the kingdom represented by the silver chest and arms is the Medo-Persian Empire. Now the second question is, in what sense was the Medo-Persian Empire inferior to the Babylonian? Well, speaking of this, you notice that Daniel says to Nebuchadnezzar, speaking of it, "But after you shall arise another kingdom inferior to yours." In what sense was the Medo-Persian Empire inferior? Well, that's been a matter of debate among scholars. It was certainly not inferior in size, for the Persian Empire was actually much larger than the Babylonian Empire, but that was part of its weakness. It was inferior in other ways, one of which being that there was a lack of inner unity in the Medo-Persian Empire. This is brought out by Kyle very carefully in his commentary, E.J. Young. Listen to Kyle's comments. "The Medo-Persian world kingdom lacked inner unity, since the Medians and Persians did not form a united people, but contended with each other for supremacy over the kingdom. This originally divided or separate character of this kingdom," he says, "appears in the image, in the circumstance, that it is represented by the breast, the chest, and the arms," he conjectures Medes and Persians, "as the two sides of the chest. The government of the Persian kingdom was not as united as was that of the Babylonian nation." Now, I just want to say, I wouldn't be dogmatic to say that the arms are intended to represent one the Medes and one the Persians, because this is an image of a man, and if you have an image of a man and he has a chest, he's going to have arms, right? So it may just be incidental to the image itself, but it is an interesting thing to note here that is something that we see in the way the image progresses, and we know that when we're talking here about the Medo-Persian Empire, that there were, in a sense, two separate peoples who were involved conjointly in the ruling of that empire, the Medians and the Persians. Well, be that as it may, the silver chest and arms represent the Medo-Persian Empire. Now let's consider thirdly, the belly and thighs of bronze and their interpretation. So we have the image of fine gold, which is followed after that by this kingdom represented by the chest and arms of silver. In this image now, he tells us, had a belly and thighs of bronze, and it followed the second kingdom. This is the third kingdom. And then in verse 39, he gives the interpretation. He says, "Then a third kingdom of bronze, which shall rule over all the earth." Okay, a third world power. Now the question is, what kingdom is represented by the bronze belly and thighs? Well, again, Daniel doesn't specifically tell us. I think he does tell us later in the book, though. But there can be hardly any doubt that the reference is to the Greek Empire founded by Alexander the Great. You know, the Medo-Persian Empire, who conquered it? It was conquered and it was incorporated into the Greek Empire. And this was somewhere around 333 BC. And there are three things, I think, that conclusively tell us that that's what this is referring to. First of all, as I said, it was indeed the Greek Empire that immediately conquered and followed the Medo-Persian Empire. Secondly, the Empire of Greece is specifically spoken of in the book of Daniel